The night sky was clear, dotted with millions of shimmering stars. Liam sat on the wooden porch of his modest countryside home, his telescope pointed toward the heavens. He had always loved stargazing, finding peace in the vastness of space. Little did he know, tonight would be different. A sudden streak of light tore across the sky, so bright it lit up the entire landscape. Startled, Liam leaned closer to the telescope, trying to follow the strange object. It wasn't just a shooting star. It moved erratically, as if guided by some unseen force. Within moments, it vanished behind the forest that bordered his home, leaving a faint trail of smoke in its wake. What was that? Liam muttered, grabbing his flashlight and a jacket. His curiosity got the better of him. He hopped into his old pickup truck and drove toward the forest, the tires crunching against the dirt road. As he reached the edge of the woods, he hesitated. The forest was dark, with only the distant glow of the crashed object to guide him. Taking a deep breath, he ventured in, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the dense trees. The smell of burnt metal grew stronger with every step. Finally, he reached a clearing. In the center lay a small, sleek spacecraft, its surface glowing faintly with an otherworldly blue hue. Steam hissed from cracks in its surface, and strange symbols shimmered along its sides. Liam's heart raced. This wasn't a piece of space junk. This was alien. As he approached cautiously, a faint groan caught his attention. Turning the flashlight toward the sound, he froze. Lying on the ground, partially covered in metallic debris, was a figure. It was humanoid, but not entirely human. The being was slender, with pale, silvery skin that seemed to reflect the moonlight. Long, flowing hair cascaded around her, and her eyes, large and deep violet, blinked weakly as she looked at him. She wore a strange suit that appeared both organic and mechanical, its edges frayed and sparking. Liam swallowed hard. Are you okay?" he asked, unsure if she could even understand him. The alien woman tilted her head, her expression filled with pain and confusion. "Help, please," she whispered, her voice faint but clear, carrying a melodic quality that made Liam's chest tighten. Without hesitation, Liam dropped to his knees, carefully removing some of the debris pinning her down. The material was surprisingly light but sharp, cutting into his palms as he worked. He didn't care. She needed help, and there was no time to think about the risks. As he freed her, she reached out, her delicate fingers brushing against his arm. "You are human?" she asked weakly, her violet eyes searching his face. Liam nodded. "Yes, and I'm going to help you." Though her expression was pained, a faint smile appeared on her lips. "I've come so far," she murmured before collapsing into unconsciousness. Liam stared at her, the weight of what had just happened settling in. This was only the beginning. Liam's heart pounded as he carried the unconscious alien woman back to his truck. She was surprisingly light, her silvery skin cool to the touch. He wrapped her gently in a blanket he kept in the back seat, glancing nervously at the forest around him. The crash might have drawn attention, and he didn't want to answer questions he couldn't explain. Driving back to his home, his thoughts raced. Who was she? Why had she come to Earth? And most importantly, was she dangerous? He shook his head. She had asked for help, her voice full of desperation. That wasn't the plea of someone who meant harm. Once inside, Liam laid her on the couch, dimming the lights to avoid startling her when she woke. He examined her closely, noticing the intricate details of her suit. It wasn't just clothing. It pulsed faintly with light, like it was alive. Her breathing was shallow, and a faint bruise marred her forehead. He grabbed a damp cloth, carefully cleaning the wound. As he worked, memories flooded his mind. Years ago, as a teenager, he'd stumbled upon an old communication device in his grandfather's shed. It looked like a broken radio, but when he tinkered with it, it came alive. Strange signals and lights filled the air, and through it, he met Scifi, an alien girl who claimed to be from another world. They had spoken for months, exchanging stories and knowledge. She was fascinated by Earth, and he was equally curious about her planet, Enara. But one day, the device went silent. He had spent years trying to fix it, hoping to reconnect with her, but eventually he gave up, thinking it had all been a strange dream. Now, as he looked at the alien woman on his couch, recognition sparked. "Syra?" he whispered, disbelief coloring his voice. Her eyes fluttered open, the deep violet orbs locking onto his. For a moment, she seemed confused, then relief washed over her face. "Liam," she said softly, her voice weak but filled with emotion. "You remember me?" He nodded, his throat tight. "It's you. After all this time, it's really you." Syra struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. Liam quickly helped her, propping her against a cushion. I had to come," she said, her voice trembling. "My people, we're in danger. And you're the only one I could trust." "Danger?" Liam asked, his brow furrowing. "What happened?" She hesitated, her eyes filling with sorrow. "A plague. It's spreading across my planet, killing everything. Our scientists found a link between the cure and elements found on Earth. I had no choice but to come here." Liam stared at her, his mind reeling. "You came all this way, for help?" Syra nodded, gripping his hand tightly. "You were my hope, Liam. You still are." Her words struck him deeply. Whatever fears or doubts he had melted away. She needed him, and he wasn't going to let her down. Liam paced back and forth in his small living room, his mind spinning with questions. Ira sat on the couch, her breathing steady but weak. The glow from her suit dimmed with every passing moment, a silent reminder of her deteriorating condition. "You're telling me your people are dying from a plague, and Earth has the key to stopping it?" Liam asked, breaking the silence. Syra nodded, her violet eyes filled with urgency. "Yes. Our scientists discovered that a rare element found in your planet's ecosystem can neutralize the disease. It's the only solution we have left. But I barely made it here. My ship wasn't built for long-distance travel. And now," she glanced at her suit, the flickering lights reflecting her growing fear. Liam ran a hand through his hair. "Okay, let's figure this out. First, you need to recover. You won't be able to help your people if you're in this state." Syra gave him a faint smile, though her exhaustion was evident. "Always thinking ahead, Liam. It's one of the things I admired about you." Her words brought a brief warmth to his chest, but the gravity of the situation quickly pulled him back. "Do you have any idea where we can find this element? It's abundant in certain Earth plants." Syra explained. "I brought a scanner in my ship to locate it, but with the crash, I don't know if it's still functional." Liam nodded firmly. "Then that's our first step. We'll go back to the crash site and retrieve whatever we can." Syra's eyes widened. The authorities might have already found it. If they discover alien technology. "Then we have to be faster," Liam interrupted. "We'll take back roads and avoid attention. If anyone asks, we're just out for a drive." Despite her exhaustion, Syra chuckled softly. "Your confidence hasn't changed." Liam grabbed a flashlight and a first aid kit, handing Syra a jacket to cover her suit. "Let's go before we lose more time." The drive back to the crash site was tense. The forest seemed darker than before, the trees looming like silent sentinels. As they approached, Liam noticed faint beams of light cutting through the trees. "Flashlights," he muttered. "Someone's already here." Syra leaned forward, her expression grim. "We can't let them take the ship." Parking the truck a safe distance away, they crept toward the clearing. Sure enough, a group of men in dark uniforms surrounded the spacecraft, scanning it with strange devices. Liam's heart sank. Government agents. This was worse than he feared. "We need a distraction," Liam whispered. Syra hesitated, then touched the side of her suit. A small dim light blinked to life. "I can cause a short-range EMP. It'll disable their equipment for a few minutes, but it'll drain what little power my suit has left. Liam frowned. Are you sure? She nodded. It's our only chance. As the agents inspected the ship, Naira activated the EMP. The lights in the clearing flickered and died, plunging the area into darkness. Liam grabbed her hand. Let's move. Together, they darted toward the ship, their race against time just beginning. Liam and Sarah crouched in the shadows near the crash site, their breaths shallow as they watched the confused agents scramble in the darkness. The sudden EMP had disabled their equipment, leaving them fumbling with flashlights and radios. This way, Zyra whispered, tugging on Liam's sleeve. They moved quickly but carefully, weaving between trees to avoid being seen. The faint glow of the damaged spacecraft was still visible in the clearing. Despite the danger, Liam felt a strange sense of determination. Zyra needed him, and he wasn't going to let her down. As they reached the edge of the clearing, Zyra pointed to a compartment on the side of the ship. The scanner should be in there, she whispered, but it might be locked. Liam nodded. I'll figure it out. Just stay hidden. Creeping closer to the ship, Liam kept his eyes on the distracted agents. They were arguing now, their voices carrying through the night. Who authorized this operation? This is above our pay grade. One of them snapped. Doesn't matter. We secure the site and wait for orders, another replied. Liam took advantage of their distraction and reached the ship. The sleek surface of the hull was warm to the touch, and the strange symbols glowed faintly under his fingers. He found the compartment Zyra had mentioned, but it was sealed tight. Come on, he muttered, searching for a way to open it. His hand brushed against a small panel, and it lit up, displaying unfamiliar symbols. Zyra's voice came through in a soft whisper. Press the symbol that looks like two circles overlapping. It's the unlock sequence. He scanned the panel and found the symbol she described, pressing it cautiously. With a quiet hiss, the compartment slid open, revealing the sleek handheld device. Its surface shimmered and Liam could feel a faint hum of energy as he picked it up. I've got it, he whispered, tucking the scanner into his jacket. Before he could retreat, one of the agents turned in his direction, his flashlight beam sweeping dangerously close. Liam froze, his heart pounding in his chest. Did you hear something? The agent asked, moving closer to the ship. Liam crouched low, hiding behind a piece of debris. The agent's footsteps grew louder, and for a moment, Liam thought he'd been spotted. Suddenly, a faint rustling came from the opposite side of the clearing. The agent turned, shining his flashlight toward the sound. Over there, he called out. Liam glanced back and saw Zyra retreating deeper into the shadows. She had thrown a small stone to create the distraction. Taking the opportunity, Liam slipped back into the forest and joined Zyra. That was too close, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Zyra nodded, her expression tense. Did you get it? He pulled the scanner from his jacket, and a flicker of relief crossed her face. We have what we need, she said, gripping his arm. Now let's get out of here before they find us. As they disappeared into the darkness, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that their challenges were far from over. The next few days were filled with tension. Liam and Zyra kept their distance from the outside world, hiding in his cabin, working together on the next steps. The scanner had given them the location of the plant-based element they needed, but the journey was dangerous. Every decision had to be carefully planned, and every move was watched. Zyra was growing weaker. Despite her advanced alien technology, her body was beginning to shut down, a side effect of the long journey and her exposure to Earth's atmosphere. Her suit helped, but it wasn't enough. Liam could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way she seemed to drift in and out of sleep, as though the weight of her mission was too much to bear. He watched her one evening as she sat by the window, staring out at the stars, her violet eyes reflecting the dim light from inside the cabin. She looked so far away, so lost in thought, and it made Liam's heart ache. "You've been quiet," he said, sitting beside her on the couch. "What's going on in that mind of yours?" Zyra turned to him, her expression softening. "I keep thinking about my people. My planet is dying, Liam, and I'm the only one who made it out." Her voice trembled with emotion. "If I don't bring back the cure, they won't survive." Liam's heart went out to her. "You're not alone in this, Zyra. I'm here with you. We'll find the cure." Her gaze softened as she looked at him. "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you to be here, to help me. I thought I would come and leave, and that would be it. But—" She paused, her fingers gently brushing against his hand. "You've become more than just a stranger to me. You've become someone I trust, someone I can rely on." Liam felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had always felt a connection to her, even back when they communicated through the old device. But now, seeing her in person, hearing her voice, feeling her presence, it was different. He realized that he would do anything for her. There was no question in his mind about that. "You've always had my trust, Zyra," Liam said, his voice steady. "I won't let you down. We'll get through this together. I promise." Zyra smiled, the faintest hint of relief in her eyes. "Thank you, Liam. You don't know how much that means to me." Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. It was just them, in this small cabin, surrounded by uncertainty and danger. But in this moment, they were united in their determination. Later that night, as they planned their journey to find the plant-based element, Zyra spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "You know, when I first came here, I thought Earth was just another planet, just another place in the universe. But now, being here with you, I see things differently. There's something about humans that's different." Liam raised an eyebrow. "Different? In what way?" Zyra smiled, her expression filled with admiration. "You humans, your determination, your resilience. You don't give up, no matter the odds, no matter how hard things get. You always find a way. It's something my people could never understand. But now, I see it." Liam's chest swelled with pride, though he felt a little humbled by her words. "Well, I've learned a lot from you too, Zyra. You've shown me what it means to never stop trying. We're not that different after all." Zyra's smile grew, and she gently rested her head on his shoulder. For a brief moment, they both allowed themselves to relax, to forget the weight of the mission ahead. In that silence, they both understood. This was more than just a mission to save her people. It was a connection, a bond forged between two beings from entirely different worlds. And no matter what dangers lay ahead, they would face them together. The next morning, the sun rose early, casting long shadows across the cabin as Liam and Zyra prepared for their next step. Their plan was simple: head to the remote valley where the plant-based element was said to be abundant. But the weight of what they were doing hung over them. The government had to be searching for them by now, and with Zyra's deteriorating condition, they couldn't afford to waste any more time. Liam stood by the truck, checking the supplies for their trip. Zyra watched him from the porch, her eyes a mixture of gratitude and worry. Her suit's lights flickered again, a sign that she was running out of power. The longer they waited, the harder it would be for her to keep going. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Liam asked, his voice laced with concern. "We could wait a bit longer, make sure we're not being followed." Zyra shook her head, her face set with determination. "No, I can't afford to wait. My people are dying, and I'm the only one who can save them. We have no time." Liam's heart sank, but he knew she was right. He couldn't let her face this alone. They climbed into the truck, and Liam started the engine. The plan was to stick to back roads, avoid any main highways where they might be seen. But as they pulled out of the driveway, Liam felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. Something wasn't right. The trees around the cabin were thick, but Liam's instincts told him they were being washed. He glanced at Syra, who was staring ahead, her expression unreadable. She must have felt it too. "Do you think they're already looking for us?" Liam asked, his voice low. Syra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand and touched her suit, her fingers moving over the glowing patterns. After a moment, her eyes widened. "They found us. They're closing in." Liam's heart pounded. He slammed his foot on the gas, the truck's engine roaring as they sped down the winding road. The trees flashed by in a blur, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. "Stay low," he told Syra, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. "If we can lose them, we might still have a chance." The sound of sirens pierced the air. Liam's pulse quickened. They had spotted them. His grip tightened on the wheel as he made a sharp turn, hoping to shake off any pursuers. Syra's hand gripped the edge of the seat. "They're not going to stop, Liam. They won't give up that easily." Liam knew she was right. The authorities wouldn't stop until they had Syra and her alien technology. He swerved down a narrow dirt path, kicking up dust as the truck bounced over uneven ground. But just as he thought they might have gained some distance, a helicopter appeared overhead. The sound of its blades grew louder, and Liam cursed under his breath. There was no way to outrun it. "They're not letting us go," Liam muttered, his mind racing. "We need to lose them before they find out what we're really after." Syra looked at him, her expression calm but urgent. "I can help, but it'll take everything I have left. Are you sure you want to do this?" Liam didn't hesitate. "Do it." Syra placed her hand on the truck's dashboard, and her suit flickered with light. The air around them seemed to hum with energy. Liam felt a sudden wave of pressure, like the world had shifted just slightly. Then, without warning, the helicopter's engine sputtered, the pilot swearing as the craft started to lose altitude. In the distance, the sound of sirens also grew faint. Liam glanced at Syra, who was pale but still focused. "What did you do?" "I overloaded their communication systems," she said, her voice weak. "It won't last long, but it's enough to buy us some time." Liam smiled. That was amazing. Syra managed a small, exhausted smile. "We're not out of danger yet, but we got a little more time to find what we need." As they continued down the winding road, Liam felt a renewed sense of hope. They weren't done yet, but the race against time was far from over. The truck rumbled down the narrow, uneven dirt road, the tires kicking up dust and dirt behind them. The air was thick with tension, and Liam could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Despite their successful escape from the helicopter, the reality of their situation had never been clearer. They were on the run, running from authorities who wanted to capture Syra, and from a looming deadline that weighed on both of them. The landscape around them was remote, with tall trees and jagged rocks. The deeper they drove into the forest, the further they were from civilization, but also the more exposed they became. If anything went wrong, they'd be out of reach and without help, but there was no turning back now. Syra's suit flickered faintly, a sign that she was still pushing her limits. Her face was pale, and she had been unusually quiet since their encounter with the helicopter. Liam knew she was tired, perhaps more tired than she was letting on, but he also knew she wouldn't stop, not when the fate of her people was on the line. "Syra, how are you holding up?" Liam asked, glancing at her briefly as he steered the truck around a bend. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the forest ahead, her violet eyes scanning the surroundings. "I'm fine," she said finally, though her voice didn't sound convincing. "We need to keep moving." Liam nodded but didn't press her further. He could tell she was pushing herself, but there was nothing more to be said. The urgency of the mission left little room for anything else. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of distant engines. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He turned quickly, peering into the rearview mirror, but saw nothing. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. More vehicles were on the road. "Someone's following us," Liam muttered, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. Zyra's expression hardened. We can't outrun them for long. They must have found another route. Liam's mind raced as he thought of a plan. There was no way they could face another confrontation with the authorities. Not out here, in the middle of nowhere. His options were running out. He spotted a narrow trail that veered off the main road, hidden behind thick brush. "Hold on," Liam said, swerving the truck toward the trail. The tires skidded as they left the main road, and Liam accelerated down the path, praying the truck would hold up. The trees on either side grew thicker, and the trail became more treacherous, winding through tight spaces where branches scratched at the sides of the truck. Behind them, the sound of engines grew louder. They were getting closer. "They're catching up," Liam said, glancing at Zyra. "Do you have anything left?" Zyra's eyes were focused, her fingers brushing the glowing symbols on her suit. "I'll try," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion creeping into her words. "It's going to be risky." Liam didn't hesitate. "We don't have a choice." As the truck barreled down the rough trail, Zyra placed both hands on the dashboard, her suit flickering brightly. Liam felt the air around them hum with energy, but he couldn't tell what she was doing. The engines of the pursuing vehicles were growing closer, and he could hear the sounds of sirens in the distance. Suddenly, Zyra's suit flared with brilliant light, and a pulse of energy shot out, rippling through the forest. The sound of the engines behind them sputtered, followed by a loud, disorienting screech. The vehicles chasing them stalled, their engines dying instantly. Liam glanced over at Zyra, who was now visibly weak, her face pale and drenched with sweat. "What did you do?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I overloaded their systems again," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It won't last long, but it should give us a few minutes." Liam took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the road ahead. "Good. We need to make the most of it." He pushed the truck faster, the trees blurring past them as they sped through the dense forest. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might escape, just a little longer. But Liam knew they couldn't keep running forever. They were in deeper than ever, and the danger was closing in. But Zyra had already given everything she had, and Liam wouldn't stop until he'd given everything to protect her too. The truck came to a screeching halt as Liam slammed on the brakes, his heart racing. They had made it to the edge of a dense forest, the road ahead stretching out into an open field. The pursuit had slowed for now, but they couldn't afford to stop. Not yet. Liam looked over at Zyra. She was still weak, her face pale and drained of color, but her eyes were sharp with determination. They had come so far, and they couldn't stop now. "We can't keep running like this," Liam said, his voice low but firm. "We need to find a way to end this. We can't let them catch us, and we need that cure. We're out of time." Zyra nodded, though it was clear the effort was taxing her. She glanced at the scanner they had retrieved from the ship. "The plant we need. It's nearby. There's a small grove not far from here, but it's deep in the valley." Liam's gaze turned toward the valley. The steep hills and thick trees stretched as far as the eye could see. "Can we make it there before they catch up?" Zyra hesitated. "I don't know, but I think we have no choice." Liam nodded and put the truck into gear again, driving at a steady pace toward the valley. They needed to move quickly, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. As they entered the valley, the landscape changed dramatically. The forest grew thicker, the air heavy with the scent of moss and earth. The silence around them felt eerie, and Liam couldn't help but feel like they were being watched. "Keep your eyes open," Liam warned, glancing at Zyra. "We're getting closer." Zyra's eyes scanned the surroundings, her senses on high alert. "I can feel it. The plants are close. But there's something else. Danger." Liam slowed the truck and began weaving through the trees. He didn't need to ask what she meant. He could feel it too. It was as if the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees. Liam slammed his foot on the brake, but it was too late. From the shadows, a group of armed soldiers emerged, blocking their path. Liam's heart sank as he saw the familiar uniforms, the same ones from the government agents who had been chasing them. "Get out of the truck," one of the soldiers ordered, his gun raised. Liam's mind raced. They had no time to fight. They had to get to the plants, and they had to do it now. "Tyra," he whispered, "we can't stay here. We have to move fast." Zyra's expression darkened. She could sense their desperation, but she also knew the risks. She turned toward Liam, her voice quiet but determined. "I can try to hold them off, but it will take everything I have left." Liam looked at her, his eyes filled with urgency. "We don't have a choice. Do what you have to do." Zyra nodded and closed her eyes for a moment, gathering what little strength she had left. Her suit flickered with energy, and the air around them crackled with power. The soldiers advanced, not yet realizing what was coming. Then, with a swift motion, Zyra's suit pulsed, and a shockwave of energy blasted out, sending the soldiers stumbling backward. They were knocked off their feet, their weapons skittering across the ground. Liam didn't waste a second. "Now's our chance. Let's go." Zyra was visibly weakened from the effort, but her resolve was unwavering. She grabbed the scanner from Liam and pointed it toward the nearby grove. "This way," she said, her voice strained but determined. They ran through the trees, hearts pounding in their chests. The grove was close now, and they could see the plants they needed, their strange, glowing leaves shimmering in the dim light. As they reached the grove, Liam took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. They had made it, but he knew this wasn't the end. The authorities would regroup, and their time was running out. Zyra knelt beside the plants, scanning them with the device. She worked quickly, her hands trembling. After a moment, she looked up at Liam, her face filled with a mix of exhaustion and hope. "I have it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This will work. We can save them." Liam let out a sigh of relief. They had done it. They had found the cure. But as they turned to leave, a loud noise echoed through the trees. The soldiers were regrouping. The final chase was about to begin. The air in the grove was thick with tension. Liam could feel his heart pounding in his chest as he glanced at Tyra. She was clutching the scanner tightly, her eyes filled with determination, but also exhaustion. She had given everything to get them this far, and now they were at the precipice of their final challenge. "We have the cure," Liam said, trying to steady his voice. "But we're not out of danger yet. We need to get back to the truck and get to safety." Zyra nodded, but her face was pale, the strain of their escape taking a visible toll on her. "We'll need to move fast. They'll be on us any minute now." Just as she spoke, the sound of footsteps reached their ears, followed by the unmistakable hum of a helicopter's blades. The soldiers had regrouped, and they weren't wasting any time. The chase was far from over. "We have no choice," Liam muttered. "We fight. We can't let them take us now." Zyra's eyes met his, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. She was too weak to hold them off for long, but she had one last move she could make. "I'll create a diversion, but you'll need to be ready to run." Liam didn't hesitate. "Whatever it takes." Without another word, Zyra placed her hand on the scanner, activating a small device that sent a pulse of energy into the air. The soldiers, who had been closing in on their position, staggered back as a blinding flash of light filled the grove. Liam shielded his eyes, feeling the surge of energy ripple through the air. In the chaos, Tyra stumbled, but Liam was quick to grab her arm, pulling her toward the truck. They had to move fast. The soldiers would recover quickly, and their only chance was to put some distance between them and the incoming danger. But just as they reached the edge of the grove, a voice shouted from behind them. "Stop right there." Liam turned, and his heart sank as he saw a figure standing between them and the truck. It was the lead agent, his gun aimed directly at Syra. "Not another step," the agent commanded. "You've caused enough trouble." Liam's instincts screamed at him to act, but he knew they couldn't fight their way out of this. They had to think quickly, or all would be lost. Without a word, he grabbed Syra's hand and yanked her into the trees beside the grove, hoping the thick foliage would hide them. The agent cursed and ordered his men to spread out. They were closing in, but Liam and Sarah had one advantage: the element of surprise. Syra glanced at Liam, her face filled with fear, but also determination. "We need to create more confusion. It's the only way." Liam nodded, his mind racing. He didn't have the skills to fight these men, but Syra did. She could hold them off long enough for them to make their escape. He had to trust her. Syra closed her eyes for a moment, her body trembling from the strain of using her energy. Then she focused her power into a single point. A blast of light shot out from her, creating a shockwave that sent the agents scrambling backward, temporarily disorienting them. Liam grabbed her again, pulling her through the trees. They had no time to waste. Every second counted. As they reached the truck, Liam slammed the door shut and started the engine. The helicopter was still circling overhead, but for now, they had a chance to escape. "Hold on," Liam shouted, accelerating down the road, his mind filled with adrenaline and fear. Behind them, the soldiers were recovering, and the sound of their pursuit grew louder. But Liam wasn't looking back. His focus was on the road ahead, where the promise of freedom and safety lay just beyond the trees. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time in days, Liam allowed himself a brief moment of hope. They had the cure, and as long as they had that, they still had a fighting chance. But they weren't out of danger. Not yet. The truck tore down the narrow dirt road, the tires skidding over uneven ground. Liam's knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the path ahead. Syra sat beside him, her face pale but determined. The sounds of the helicopter and the soldiers' pursuit still echoed in the distance, but Liam refused to look back. They had the cure now. There was no turning back. "We're almost there," Liam muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just a little further." Syra's hand was trembling on her lap, but she nodded. "I can feel it. We're close." Liam's heart raced, but there was a spark of hope in his chest. They had made it this far, despite everything that had stood in their way. They had found the plants, retrieved the cure, and outrun the soldiers. He could almost taste victory now. But the road ahead was still fraught with danger. They couldn't afford to relax. The soldiers weren't far behind, and the helicopter was still circling above, searching for any sign of them. They needed to get somewhere safe, somewhere where they could contact Syra's people and deliver the cure before it was too late. Ahead, Liam saw the familiar outline of an abandoned barn in the distance. It was on the outskirts of town, far enough from the main roads to avoid being easily spotted. It wasn't much, but it would do. "We're almost there," Liam repeated, more to himself than to Syra. As they reached the barn, he slammed the brakes, bringing the truck to a halt. Without wasting a second, he turned off the engine and grabbed the cure from the passenger seat. "Stay here. I'll check the area." Syra didn't argue. She watched him cautiously as he got out of the truck, his footsteps crunching on the gravel. She felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. They had come so far, and now it seemed like they were so close to the end. But she knew they couldn't let their guard down. Not yet. Liam disappeared inside the barn, his figure vanishing into the shadows. Syra sat still, listening to the sounds of the night. The chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, and the distant hum of the helicopter still hovering above. She could feel her energy fading, her suit barely keeping her alive. But she wouldn't give up. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. Moments later, Liam returned, his expression serious. "It's clear. We can stay here for now." Zyra nodded, her breath a little shaky. Thank you, Liam, for everything. Liam smiled, though it was faint. We're not done yet. We've got work to do. He helped her out of the truck, supporting her as they made their way into the barn. Inside, it was dark and musty, but it offered the privacy they needed. Liam set the cure down on an old wooden table and activated the device Kyra had used earlier. We're going to get this to your people, Liam said, determination in his voice. They'll have the resources to finish this, to save them. Laura nodded, her heart filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. She had never imagined that she would come to Earth, desperate for help, only to find a human who would risk everything for her. It was something she never expected, and yet here they were, standing on the edge of a new beginning. This isn't just about saving my people, Kyra said softly. It's about saving both of our worlds. I've seen something in you, Liam. Your strength, your heart. You're more than just a human. Liam looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. I don't care where you're from, Kyra. I care about who you are. And I'm not letting you down. Zyra smiled, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. They were going to make it. Against all odds, they had succeeded. As they prepared to send the cure to her people, the first light of dawn peeked through the cracks in the barn, casting a soft glow over them. For the first time in days, Liam allowed himself to relax, knowing they had done the impossible. The world outside might still be filled with danger, but inside that barn, they had found something more important: hope. And as long as they held on to that, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building a future, together.